Hey folks, so welcome back. This week we are going to talk about test items and item analysis. So in the last module, we focused more on kind of bigger structure with factor analysis. And this week we're going to kind of zoom in a little, dive a little deeper, and talk about the individual items. All right, so as a kind of general motivation, just recall that validity and reliability tend or depend on the characteristics of its items, as do methods of evaluating, like so factor analysis, dimensionality, stuff like that. And our test items, so the individual pieces need to be analyzed both qualitatively and quantitatively through the test development process. All right, so our roadmap for this kind of big module is we're going to talk about item format, some general pieces there. Then we'll talk about, for the next chunk, item analysis. And there we'll dive deeper into item difficulty, item discrimination, item characteristic curves, and ease us into item response theory, which is like the big stats thing that we've been building towards. Next module is the last stats module, and everything after that is just applying what we've learned into that framework. So for the folks that are enduring the statistics, that we're coming to the end, I promise. For folks that enjoy the statistics, I apologize, we're coming to the end. It is what it is. So, cool. So, item formats. There are tons of different item formats. You'll know that on my assessments, I do not do a lot of variety here. I'm a short answer kind of gal with super detailed rubrics. However, there are other types that are more amenable to assessment. And these are primarily dichotomous formats and polytonomous or polycrotonomous formats. Now, dichotomous are where you have alternatives, so just two choices. True, false, agree, disagree, yes, no, that kind of flavor. The MMPI, both original and the old school and the modernized version, we'll talk about those soon, I promise, have this format. You'll know it a lot. You'll see it all the time. Now the other one is polytomous, which is more than two alternatives. This is classically referred to as multiple choice. So not in this class, the midterm. Don't know why I have that in there. But the SAT, GRE, most assessments that you'll have had in your lower level psych classes, because they're faster and easier to grade, frankly. And they are good when made well. So here's where the challenge is. And fundamentally, this is why I will very likely never have multiple choice, because I am terrible at making distractors. So distractors are incorrect choices. And there's a lot of debate on how many alternatives. So there's one study from '94 that found that you can get equivalent validity and reliability from a test with two distractors, so just 3 items total, as one with 4 distractors, so 5 items. Can I help you, Archie? All right. We have a guest. I don't know how the fish is going to handle this. Badly. I think is the key takeaway here. Anyway, so here's why I struggle with distractors. Because good distractors are plausible. As in, like, if you only have some knowledge, so partial knowledge, the equivalent of like having a partial credit, like a half credit on an essay or something like that, well, then you would be more likely to select those distractors. However, I really don't like penalizing partial knowledge. And so it's just hard to come up with a good, equitable way to do it. And so I gave up. But I toy with it a lot. Fun facts that you didn't need to know. All right. So should you guess? This is probably the big fundamental question that every strategic test like tutoring service is going to talk to you about. And this is why it's always really important to know what your test is before you take it so you can choose different strategies. Because it depends. It depends a lot on the scoring method underlying if you should guess. And we'll learn a little more about this in the IRT unit, but it's called a correction for guessing. And a corrected score can be calculated, this is like old school classic way to do it. R is the number of correct items minus the number of incorrect items divided by the number of polytomous choices minus 1. What does that mean? Well, because the idea here is that say you know nothing, right? And there's a true-false questionnaire on your test. On average, you'd expect to get half of the questions correct if you just randomly guessed because there are only 2 choices. So the correction for guessing is a way to kind of penalize that procedure so that it has some cost. The logic behind this, I have mixed feelings about it in practice, but in theory it makes sense. And so if there's no correction for guessing, if there's no penalty for guessing, guess away. Please do it. Now, sure, there can be opportunity cost because you're spending time on those instead of elsewhere, but all else being equal, don't leave points on the table. But if there's a correction for guessing, it can be better to leave some blank. So if you can't eliminate a distractor, so if you can't get your expected value for the question, say there's 1 in 4 and the penalty is a third. You better, if you can cut that down to guessing between 2 choices, so your expected value of getting correct, knowing nothing, is 50%, then it's worth guessing. But if there's a bigger, essentially guess if your expected value is higher than none. In other words, see if you can beat the odds. Cool. So that is wrapping up our brief little introduction to big ideas and item analysis. So I'll see you in a bit.